night. Phones are in airplane mode. Got our coffee. Good to go?
Good to go. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the pod, or welcome if this is your first episode. This is Maybe We're Just Rambling, and we are your hosts, Rebecca.
And Stuart.
And this is a podcast where we sit and ramble about anything and everything, whatever we decide to talk about at the moment. Today, we're going to talk about the other half of our family that we, for whatever reason, haven't mentioned up to this point. But before we get into that, how are you doing today?
Me?
Yeah.
Or them?
No, you.
I'm doing well. It's probably in the 50s and 60s and rainy, and I don't have a whole lot of energy for anything else. So sitting here is perfect.
We're actually recording this in bed today because sitting at... we're painting a picture. People want to know this stuff. I like when I listen to a podcast and people tell me what they're doing.
I'm drinking coffee out of a come and take it mug.
We actually went about an hour ago and spent $75 on propane.
$85.
Oh, I stand corrected. $85 on propane to fill up our two big tanks and then a smaller one just to have as a backup if we should need it. That's what we cook with. That's what we run the fridge off of.
That's what we heat with.
That's what we're going to be heating with. Yeah, so we ran out completely last night. Luckily, we didn't need any until
But now we'll keep
today.
a spare one.
Right.
One of the small barbecue size ones.
Mm-hmm. And we are planning on heating with propane for the winter, like Stuart just said, but we're getting a new heater because the furnace in the RV...
Let me tell y'all about RV furnaces. Well, they vent to the outside, right? So it's taking and using... I'm trying not to get too technical, but it takes and uses 18,000 BTUs an hour of propane. But
so break that down Barney style. What does that mean?
Okay.
Like you're explaining it to me for the first time.
So imagine like a space heater that you plug into a regular outlet that does 1,500 watts. That's about 5,000 BTU when it's on high. So do about 3 times that amount, and that's about how much our furnace of heat would take in. But then it doesn't put all that into the RV, so it'd lower that down to 13,000. So you're kind of losing a whole lot. And we had a lot of problems with our RV furnace. It didn't work when we got it,
and we knew that.
So I replaced the limit switch, which is like a thermostat. I replaced the sail switch, which basically registers that the blower fan is working, and then it worked fine for a little while.
Yeah. And
then the circuit board failed on it, and I'm just tired of dealing with it.
They're notorious. Anybody who's owned an RV for any length of time has had a bad experience with their furnace.
So what we're doing is we're getting a propane like wall heater, and we're going to have it on some legs, a stand. It's basically those rectangular looking objects. Maybe we can show a picture.
Yeah, I can put a picture into the show notes on our Instagram. It's going to be really, really nice, though. I think it's going to be a huge step up. Well, last winter we used electricity because last winter we were in a campground, and it was really nice because we didn't pay for electric there. Yeah. So you could use as much as you wanted, and so we just heated we had a Mr. Buddy heater?
No, it was a Mr. Heater.
Mr. Heater?
Yeah. It was a radiant type. I mean, it was aesthetically pleasing too, but we paid...
Nice heater.
Yeah, we paid $400 a month, including electricity and water. And while that's not really cheap, if you're thinking about it from a utility standpoint, it's pretty affordable when you're getting a spot, you're getting a place to accept mail, packages.
It was a really nice
unlimited amount of electricity. Never had one complaint about how much we used. I'm sure we didn't even use the most out of anybody.
No.
And unlimited water. And that's a pretty affordable setup, and that helps a lot. But here
we're going to be paying for electric.
We pay for electricity and water, and electricity is a very expensive way to heat.
It is, yeah.
So
it just makes sense to
we're going to propane.
And hopefully we'll have the propane heater soon. We ordered it back like 5 days ago, and we called the company today because we still haven't gotten an update on the shipping, and we're supposed to get a pretty big cold snap tomorrow. So that's another reason why we filled up this smaller propane tank today, is because I still have a small propane heater that I actually bought to use on the boats when I was stationed in Connecticut, because the little boats that I worked on were like steel and very, very cold. Well, they were aluminum, but
that's the
regardless.
Heater that we used when Snowmageddon happened.
Yeah, this past winter. So we'll have that if we need it, but hopefully our new propane heater will be coming in soon. And whenever it does, you can expect to see some pictures and some feedback about it, and I'm sure it'll end up in one of my vlogs. But yeah, that's what we spent the first half of the day doing, and we didn't have coffee this morning, which was kind of a bummer because on really rainy, gray days, it's so nice to have like something warm. We had ramen for lunch, but it's not the same. So we've got our coffee now.
All right, let me rewind to last night a little bit. It was 10:30, and I was going out the door to the deer stand because we had seen hogs on the trail cam. But before that, let me just say that I left Rebecca with a rat's nest in here because
Stuart makes a mess whenever he plays.
We put in a vent fan, a hose, etc. for our composting toilet, and where I wanted to put it was where the furnace was. So we pulled the furnace out.
We modified our space.
We modified the hardware, the space, and you can share a picture of that also.
It's not done yet. It still needs hinges and a handle and
hinges,
paint.
handle, and some paint. But you can kind of get the idea of it.
We also, just as an aside, made a couple of little changes to our composting toilet. We aren't quite at the point where we want to do like an update.
I don't think we've mastered it yet.
Not quite yet, because there is a little bit of a learning curve, but we installed a fan and ventilation system.
It's basically using like a little bitty computer fan that's about, 3 inches by 3 inches.
And that's just to help keep the toilet as dry as possible, because a really moist environment isn't a really good idea when you're trying to do compost. It can attract insects, and it's not great. And already we've noticed a huge difference. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll go ahead and get into the topic.
So this week we're going to talk about, like she said, our other halves of our family,
our companions, our best friends, our protectors.
Yeah.
Our dogs.
Our dogs. So we've got Apollo. He's laying on the floor below me right now. He's about 4.5, going on 5. He'll be 5 in January. And I got him in May of 2017.
He's a blue heeler, or an Australian cattle dog.
And he is the oldest old man type of dog that you can get, but also he has very fun and random spurts of just zoomies and energy, and
he conserves his energy. He's very smart about how he lives his little life.
They all have their routines. It's pretty cool.
He's so smart too, just in general. Like,
they're one of the smartest breeds. I would put him against anything with trying to figure something out.
And it blows me away. Like, we have conversations with him all the time. I mean, anybody who has a pet talks to their pet. It's just natural. But even sometimes, perfect example. I vacuum the floor probably a couple of times a day, once in the morning and then once in the evening, just because with traffic and everything, you kind of have to stay on top of it a little bit more if you want a clean space. And we're going to get to that in a minute. But it's a small area, and he has like certain spots where he likes to lay. He likes to lay next to the couch, between the couch and the dining room chairs, and then he likes to lay on Stuart's side of the bed, between the bed and the wall, and then he has his own little bed in the back where he'll lay sometimes if it's really cold or like at night. And so when I get the vacuum out to clean, I'll get to the spot where he's laying, and I'll just tell him, Apollo, can you get up, please? I need to vacuum where you are. I don't have to say, like, move or get up or any command like that, like just a request.
Looking at me.
And he knows we're talking about him.
Yeah.
And he gets up and he moves. And I just started doing that. We talk to him all the time. We talk to him like he can understand us.
Here's another example. We've been putting their water bowls under the fridge right there. And then you move them back to the back room where the bunkhouse used to be. And he walked over there and looked for the water and couldn't find it. And you were just sitting and watching, and you're like, Apollo, your water's in the back now. It's by your bed. And he just looked at her and just walked back there to the water and went and drank water.
So I think, I mean, I have different theories about how much dogs understand as far as like the English language and speech and everything. But I think Apollo understands way more than most. He's just really, really smart. And he's a joy to live with. He's an incredible dog.
So now let's flip to the polar opposite.
The redheaded stepchild in our family. So last year in June or July, in June, we rescued a dog from the shelter in Nacogdoches. And I had wanted a dog for a really, really long time. I'd wanted my own dog. The plan, regardless of how many we had, was always, at least in my mind, for me to get a dog. But I really wanted to rescue one. It's something, adoption and rescue is something that I'm really passionate about. I'm really big on the whole adopt, don't shop idea. And so we went to the shelter, and there were a couple of dogs that I had seen that I really liked.
You remember that little husky that I had to convince you no?
Cleo, she was so cute. She got adopted quickly, so that made me really happy. But I really wanted her because she was like a little bit, she had some red and some cream and some brown.
Quick disclaimer, I'm not like an anti-rescue thing. and the reason I convinced her no is because she was a husky.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't work here.
It gets too hot, and she looked like she was going to get really, really big.
Yeah.
When 200 square foot of space, that is something I would think about a little bit. Not everybody would, but I would. So Cleo ended up going to somebody else, but then we went and we were looking, and we looked at a couple of dogs, and I wanted to get one on the younger side. I wasn't sold on it. I don't know. I believe that animals choose you more often than you choose them. And so, like, every single pet that I had growing up was a stray that showed up, and I had the best relationships with those animals, and I 100% believe that they chose us and our family. So I went in there with that mentality, and I was just kind of waiting for like a light bulb to go off. And we were walking along and looking, and all of the kennels had like the tags up with the dog's information, and some of them were available for adoption and some of them weren't because they were still waiting for a test to come back, like they had just been picked up. And all the dogs were, excited to see us and coming up to the door and everything, and I was walking along, and none of them really resonated. And then I happened to look, and there was one kennel, and the dog in the kennel wasn't up at the gate like all of the rest of them were.
One of the few that were not excited.
She was kind of hanging back a little bit, and the tag on the door said that she wasn't available for adoption, but I was looking at her, and she was like watching me and like kind of wagging her tail a little bit. And so we went and asked.
Very skittish.
Yeah, if we could interact with her. And they were like, yeah, you can. I don't remember why she wasn't. I think.
Well, you have to wait a certain amount of days once they get to the shelter. So that it's not somebody's dog that got out of the yard and they come back looking for it.
Yeah, but it wasn't that. I don't know if it was like.
And it might have been a test or something.
Yeah, something like that. It was something medical. But they gave me the go ahead, and so I went and I like opened the door and I crouched down, and she like came up slowly, and she was so nervous.
She peed herself.
Yeah, she peed herself. She was so nervous. But I just liked her right away, and we took her over to the little play area and let her run around and sniff, and she like kind of started to open up a little bit, and we did some things with her, like flipped her on her back and like rubbed her belly and stuff, just to like gauge to see how.
If you like, you can hold a dog down and see how much they fight back when they're young, and if you pinch them and see just how they react.
Little things to see like how aggressive she might be. And she was checking all my boxes, and I was like, this is the dog. And at the time, her name was Clover, because
terrible name.
Not a great name, but it was better than, they named the dogs after the streets that the dogs were found on, and she had been found on Cleaver Street. And the lady was like, I couldn't call her Cleaver, like that's terrible. So they called her Clover. A cleaver is like
I know, but
thing.
Like if you're talking about names, like what does a cleaver look like?
Yeah, nothing good. So we brought Apollo, and they got along great, and we did the paperwork, and I adopted her and renamed her River. and she's a little blonde dog with like some darker points. We think that she is predominantly black-mouthed cur, which is a southern hunting breed that they use for like hunting hogs. Predominantly, they were bred for hunting hogs.
She's just on the lighter side. She's so lean.
She's not purebred.
No, she's not purebred. She's so lean that she loves the water too. She's got a lot of stuff in her.
Probably a little bit of retriever or lab, maybe a little bit of pit bull, not a lot. Just a mixture of different things. But the sweetest dog, but man, she is a character.
She's dumb. I'm gonna say that. She's the polar opposite of Apollo. She is dumb. Doesn't mean I love her any less, but she is so dumb.
She does some goofy things. She's very
monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, everything that she's learned about being a dog, she's learned from Apollo, which has been really cool. I mean, she's not an idiot because she picked up on like, oh, if they throw something and I go and get it and bring it back, they'll throw it again, and it's like a game. And she learned that from watching Apollo.
She's better at him now.
She learned to shake from watching Apollo.
And sit,
and almost how to beg too. She like kind of gets the idea. That thing that dogs will do if you're petting them and they like put their paw on you. She just recently started doing that, and it's because she's been watching Apollo, and he always does that.
Yeah.
But probably about 6 months into having her, I happened to look at her one day, and she was going cross-eyed just a little bit, and I was like, oh my gosh, because I looked at her and I was like, what are you looking at? And then I realized like her eyes were crossing, and I looked it up, and some dogs are somewhat prone to it, and it's a genetic abnormality, basically.
It's a symptom of...
Yeah, it's a symptom of poor breeding.
The gene pool being very shallow.
Yeah, we think that maybe comes from a close-knit family. But it doesn't matter. She's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
And the thing that I like about her is that she's very rambunctious. She loves to play. It's something black-mouthed cur are known for. They're not
gallops everywhere.
Yeah, they're not great for little kids because they can be very clumsy and like very not aggressive, but like very rambunctious, and they'll knock you over if you're little and stuff. But she's very gentle. Like she has a very soft mouth. She, other than like a couple of times when she was a puppy with like disciplinary stuff, we've never really had any issues. She's super sensitive, so it's hard. She's sensitive and she's stubborn, so she can be difficult to work with sometimes. But overall, I feel like she's been a great dog for me to have, especially coming out of having been recovering from a dog attack and everything. I had Apollo, who more or less has like completely rehabbed me in no small way, and that entire story is a story for another day, but just to suffice it to say that Apollo is an incredible dog, and 110% the reason why I am not afraid of dogs now. He's amazing. And then I got River and worked with her and found a way to heal through that too. So it's the whole thing. Having dogs has been incredible. And traveling with them has been incredible, and that's what we want to really focus on. Just
as a general statement, it's been really cool to travel with something other than you and I, and to see how it reacts to the places we go.
Yeah, you kind of see it through their eyes.
They're not looking at this beautiful mountain like we are, but that's a new smell. Hey, look at that. Hey. I want to go over there. Ooh, that water's cold. Ooh.
It's very like reactionary and in the moment, and they're completely absorbed. Yes, it's so genuine, and I love getting to see that and traveling with them. Anybody who's traveled with a dog, I've heard them kind of say the same thing, is that it's just a real gift to do that. But it also can present some challenges too, especially when you're traveling in, like, full time in a small space. You live in a small space. There's like certain workarounds and things that you have to think about that you don't have to think about when you're living in a house.
So if you were living in a house and you're going traveling, somebody's going to take care of your dogs. Well, we take our house with us.
And our dogs.
You can't leave your animals in the trailer
while
you drive. I just want to say that is very unsafe. If you just go on Facebook and search for RV crash. These things are not built very well, And that is a big no-no. If you're going to put your dog in your RV, you might as well go back there too. Okay. If you wouldn't put a child back there, don't put your dog.
Yeah, that's exactly it. You basically have a 2-year-old child forever. Like, from the moment you have that dog until the moment that dog passes away, you basically have a 2-year-old, and they never like grow into an adult. And so you have to think about a dog the same way you would think about a toddler. And I would think that would be common sense, but you'd be surprised how many people
they're like, oh, I'm sorry, we've got me and my wife and 3 kids and
a Great Dane
and a Great Dane, and can't fit it with all our luggage and this and that in our expedition, so we have to put the dog in the RV. It's like, you should figure something out or have somebody watch your dog.
You need to reprioritize your
life. I'll get off the soapbox there with that. But traveling with our dogs, with all that being said, some of the ways that we've traveled with them is we've had a camper shell on the back of my truck.
That was nice.
That is the absolute best way, because then you don't have to worry about the mess. And then
dirty paws or anything like that, hair.
Yeah. And then the second way that we've done it too is use like those metal crates, kennels, and we have ratchet strapped those very securely down, and we've even covered them with a tarp when in inclement weather.
And that worked really well.
That works well. It's just less than ideal if you need to use the bed of your truck for other things.
And we did when we were traveling. And
in terrible weather. If it's 110 degrees outside and they're sitting in a metal box,
I didn't feel good about it.
Yeah. I'm kind of glad you made me... You decided for us, basically, on the last option, which is putting them in the vehicle with you. And the way that we accomplish that is with a dog seat protector cover ish thing from Bass Pro. I think it was like $20 or $30. And then we also got a packing blanket and poked some holes in it and put the headrest of my front seats through those holes, so it covered the whole back of the front seat and then covered the floor. And then, I mean, hair was everywhere, but it at least held the hair in.
It did, and it was nice because we were able to figure out how to keep like our tools and things in the back seat, and then they had like plenty of space back there to lay out. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, River is a little bit of like a bed hog. She would like she would spread out and take up as much of the seat as she could, and then Apollo would be like in the corner. But Apollo does not assert himself. He kind of just goes with the flow.
He doesn't ever want to get in a fight. I mean, he's protected River from things,
and me,
and you from things. But he's not going to sit there and get in a knockdown, drag-out fight
over not having enough leg room or something, which is nice, and we appreciate that. And I also made the deal with you, like, this is what we're going to do for the dogs, because I didn't want to have them in the back, because I knew, since we were traveling over the summer, even though we were going to be trying to stay in elevation, there were going to be times where it was going to be hot, and we couldn't control that.
We saw 105.
So I said, this is where they're going to be. I'm going to figure out a way to have them back there and like keep the hair off of the upholstery and everything, and I will be responsible for cleaning it out. And so whenever we would stop, so if we drove for a couple of days when we would stop, I would take everything out, shake it out. We have this, it's basically a lint roller, but it's reusable. It's called a Chom Chom, and I can link it in the show notes of this episode for whatever you're listening on, Apple, Spotify, whatever. If you go to the episode, and I'll link it there because it's really cool.
It's basically like an old-fashioned fabric brush, but that it goes back and forth, and it all puts it in a little container.
It collects everything it picks up into a little reservoir. So I would chom chom or lint roll everything, vacuum everything if I had the ability to, brush it all out, put it all back together, and that was how we traveled with them. And I mean, hair still got everywhere, but I mean, that's just a reality when you have dogs. It's kind of the price that you pay for having companionship, and I'll happily pay it. It doesn't bother me at all. So,
like Rebecca said, you probably vacuum twice a day, and maybe every 2 to 4 days we have a steam mop that we clean the floors with, just because our feet, our shoes, if we're stepping in for something, and the dogs, there's just always going to be something being brought in. And we have to have a way to contain that and a way to clean that.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of have my notes here that I'm glancing at. Two things that I want to touch on before we get to the keeping things clean. Just to finish up, kind of creating a space for the dogs. We had the space designated for them when we traveled so that they were comfortable. And then also, whenever we got this RV and when we were shopping around, I was very adamant about the RV that we got needed to have a bunkhouse. I didn't necessarily care if it was a full or a half, but it needed to have that space because I knew that we were going to need it for dogs. And I've been really thankful that I stuck to that and that we have that.
That's just a catch-all utility room.
I mean, we use it for everything because not our dishwasher. I wish our washing machine is back there. We have a couple closets with extra clothes, the oven, kitchen cart, but then also the dogs' beds fit back there and their water dish. And then we were able to install a baby gate that we put up so that whenever we leave, they can hang out back there. And then at night, they sleep back there as well. And it's a space that they can go to where they can sleep and hang out. It's like their own little space in the RV.
Yeah, that's their safe space. I think they need it's kind of like having a den. We don't go back there, and we go back there, but we don't intentionally go back there and like
create
chaos or rip them out of there and make them seem like, no, get out of here. No. Like,
it's really
that's
really
always
important.
the place they can go if they're tired and it's loud in here, or we're doing something else, or
it's really important, just as a general aside note, for dogs to have their own space. Even if you live in a conventional home, for them to have, even if it's just like a kennel with a cover on it, so that it's like kind of a hidden away private place.
That cover helps.
Dogs need somewhere to go where they can like have their own little space. And so I really wanted to make sure that I had that because I wanted to be able to give them a good quality of life, even in a smaller space. And it's totally doable. There are 1,000,001 ways to do it. Even if you don't have a setup where you have a bunkhouse, I've seen people install like little kennels underneath their beds and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, like they use their dinettes where there's like a booth seat on the left and right, and where you're sitting on top of, they just make that little rectangle under there a space where the dogs go.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of really creative ideas like on Pinterest and Instagram and stuff for people who travel with their dogs and their cats as well, and all other kinds of animals. It's crazy what people have figured out how people have figured out how to travel with their animals. So anyway, I want to make sure that I stress that because I think it's really, really important. But moving on from there, just as far as like keeping things clean, obviously keeping the vehicle clean, that was like a full-time job when we were traveling over the summer because we spent a lot of time in the vehicle driving from place to place.
Admittedly, I think we did more driving
than
we
ideal.
wanted. I mean, we kind of knew we were going to do that.
Hindsight being 20/20.
Hindsight, I would either go slower or do a longer trip or not ramble as we did as much.
Yeah. I mean, this was like that trip was the first time we ever did something like that. So there were some learning curves, but I digress. So as far as keeping the RV clean, so there are a couple of things that we have implemented that are just everyday routine now for us, and the dogs expect it, and it's really really easy.
In a way, some of it's funny. We've got this thing, it's called a mud buster.
I will link it and I will put a picture in our show notes.
Yeah, it's basically, imagine a big old plastic cup, and it's got some silicone little, what are those called, fingers in it?
Yeah, I don't know, it's like I'm like making a motion with my hands, like a anemone that you can't see. Yeah,
it's basically a plastic cup with these things on the inside of it, and you stick the dog's foot in there, go in and out, in and out, in and out, and it helps get a lot of the dirt out of in between their pads and off their hair. And if it's muddy, you can put a little water in it too, and then it's
worked well. We've used that way before too.
Oh, we've had that thing since Connecticut.
That long?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, we've had it. It's held up really well too. And the cool thing
They're
about
like less than $10
is you can completely disassemble it and like clean all the different. I mean, it's just a cup with a like ring, like think of like what would go on a mason jar. You have like the ring and then you have the insert, so minus the insert, just the ring, and then the rubber thing that cleans their feet, and you can take all that out and clean it. It's amazing.
That probably stops 95% of the dirt coming in.
And especially here, because where we're at right now, there isn't a lot of grass. I don't know if any will ever really grow because it's just
sand.
Yeah, it's very, very sandy here. So they bring in a lot of sand. And I cannot imagine how bad it would be in here if we didn't have that. Mm-hmm. So the Mud Buster has helped a lot. Anytime they come inside, I stop them on the little welcome mat, and they know to just like start lifting their paws. And
if it's cold or raining, they're like throwing their paw at you.
Like, hurry, clean my feet. I just want to come inside.
Get it, please.
And so I always clean their feet right before they come in. And then if it's been raining or if it's muddy and their feet are a little bit wet, a lot of the time I'll go after and like I have like rags that are specifically for them.
They used to be nice kitchen towels,
but they're old and worn out. It's just the way it goes. And so I'll wipe off their paws and their pads and like brush any water off their coats. And that helps.
It's nice with Apollo. He's got a double coat that resists it, so you can basically take a towel and just go from front to back.
That's a double-edged sword, though, because his fur is so thick that with his sand, if he's been laying out in it, he brings a lot in his coat sometimes. But that brings me to the third part of overall cleanliness. I am a bit of a clean freak. I'm not quite as bad as Monica from Friends, but I'm on that level somewhere in there. And so I do as much as I possibly can to keep things as clean as I can. And living in an RV, there's a certain amount of dirt that you kind of just have to accept, like it is just the way it is.
You know how if you had a house and it's say 1,500 square feet, that's a pretty average, larger sized house. Put a couple in there, and then put 2 dogs in there, and sure, things are going to get dirty. Well, condense that down to about like a fifth the size or an eighth the size.
It's much more noticeable.
And that's what we're in. And it is much more noticeable because when things go wrong or things get dirty, it's right there and you can't get away from it, and it compresses all of that filth.
Of the general dirt and grime.
Imagine vacuuming a 1,500 square foot house twice a day. And how big
was that house in Connecticut?
Oh, that was a townhouse. That was probably 20 by. That was probably 1,100. 1,000.
So that was even a decent sized building, and even that I didn't notice it as much as I notice it here.
Yeah.
But we have a little Bissell hardwood floor vacuum, and I try to use that twice a day. Honestly, I can get away with just vacuuming once a day, like at the end of the day, but if I really am like on top of my game, I do it twice a day, and that helps pick up any of the loose hair, and any of the like stuff that they track in that I didn't get whenever I cleaned them off. And then Stuart mentioned the steam mop. I think it's a Bissell as well. That thing is amazing, and we're able to use it in the RV because we don't have linoleum like a lot of RVs do. We may at one point get it, and at that point I'll have to figure something else out. But right now we just have
it can be hard with that because you have a glue that's laid down and then a sheet. And if you put too much heat to that glue, it can reactivate it and make things not stick. And
the steam mop gets very, very hot, but it cleans really, really well. And since we just have what kind of flooring?
This is luxury vinyl plank flooring.
Yeah, so it's like the tongue and groove stuff. I'm able to use that. And I'll do that maybe once or twice a week, maybe more if the weather is really bad and it's been wet and muddy.
I'd say every 2 to 4 days.
Yeah. I'll go over everything with that, and that cleans awesomely. And that's pretty much the cleaning routine as far as like the floor and the dogs are concerned. During like shedding season, Apollo in particular blows his coat twice a year. He blows it in the spring and then in the fall, whenever he's like changing out his wear. So I'll try to brush him during those times. And then River kind of just sheds a little bit all of the time, so I'll brush her every now and again. But other than that, that's the bulk of what I do to try to keep it clean. And I know that there are people I know who travel with dogs, and they like basically just accept the dirt and don't do anything about it, and that works really, really well for them, and that's awesome. And a part of me wishes that I was on that level, but I just can't do it. I care way too much about how things feel, and if things feel dirty and grimy and cluttered, I have a really, really hard time functioning.
If you are having to put on flip-flops in here. Because the floors are dirty, you should probably clean the floors.
Yeah. I'm
not saying you, but the floor should probably be
clean. Yeah. And I just don't like dirt. So I try to keep it clean and do what I can.
But with all that said, still, and all the effort that goes into it, I wouldn't trade having animals for the world. It's been so cool to go all around the country, and we see things through a completely different lens, where it's Monument Rocks, or it's a mountain range, or it's this mountain stream, or it's this lake in the middle of North Dakota where it's 105, or it's a city park in Illinois.
They bring
sorry.
No, I interrupted you.
Oh, it's just they I forgot what I was going to say now, but I almost said they bring.
They add an element of innocent, like, joy to everything, and they're just a joy to have around. I mentioned this before we started recording, but one of the coolest things was, say, the bighorns. Of course, we talk about the bighorns, I think, every episode now. But we were there, and Apollo got to roam wherever the hell he wanted to. Yeah. It was great. Through the sagebrush and everything. And River, we tied a rope around some sagebrush. She's not a homebody as much as Apollo is. She will run away. Yes. And we didn't feel confident that she would come back. Nope. She will go to whoever gives her attention and food. But a perfect example of something that I really liked seeing was that Apollo went off, wandered away, and then he came back with an entire leg of a deer. We don't know where he found that. A whole leg. Ugh, it was gross. From the shoulder to the hoof. Actually, he did that several times. Yeah. In several of the different, every single place we went. The Black Hills, remember all that? And then, yeah. He found some part of an animal to chew on. It's gross. Every single place that we went. We always joke that, like, if something happened, heaven forbid, and Apollo, like, ended up on his own and had to fend for himself, he'd be totally fine. River, on the other hand, she doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell, to be perfectly honest. She's just way too much of a princess, and she just needs somebody to take care of her. If it's raining, she's looking there like squinting in the rain. She hates the rain. She does this really funny thing. I'm kind of going off on a sidebar here, but it's fine. Whatever. She does this really funny... It's our podcast. Yeah, we can do whatever the hell we want. She does this thing where if you're sitting outside somewhere, she'll come and she'll park her ass directly on you. Like, when she says ass, she means butthole. Yeah, her entire butthole will just like on your foot or on your knee, like whatever. And I always thought, like, why is she doing this? I didn't really understand. And she's like very fastidious about keeping herself clean down there, which is super cool. Like, I don't have a problem with that. I'm glad. But then I realized the other day watching her, the reason that she does that is because she doesn't like getting dirt up in her junk. And she has no way to protect it. No, because she doesn't have a lot of fur and stuff like Apollo does. Like, her fur is really, really short. A normal dog sits, they just put their butt on the ground. Yeah, and their hair kind of like... She sits on her legs and keeps her butt off the ground. Yeah, she kind of balances like a kangaroo using like her legs and her tail so that her butt is off the ground. And it's because she doesn't want to get it dirty. And it's so funny. And when I realized that, I had such a laugh because... that's just her, that's a perfect little encapsulation of what her personality is like. And that's just the kind of dog that she is, and I love it. Getting back to enjoying them, seeing them do their things. Yeah. We were in the Black Hills for a couple days, and that apparently had been a site where somebody had cleaned an animal and then buried the bones. And the dogs and our friend Chrissy, her dog, they found all of the bones. And let me tell you, that is the worst gas I've ever smelled in my life. Just rotting bones. Yeah, I want to know, does anybody else out there, do your dogs fart? Or is it just us? Because I never really knew that dogs farted. I've always known they did. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. But no, these are audible. Yeah, like loud. Yeah. farts. Like, there have been times where one of them has farted, and I've looked at Stuart, and I'm like, Stuart, was that you? And he's like, no, that wasn't me. And then the smell hits us both at once, and we're like, oh, and we're like cracking windows and like opening the door, trying to get some fresh air. And venison, for whatever reason, I've learned, produces the worst. I don't know why. I guess maybe it's very nutrient dense.
You remember him and that hoof?
Ugh.
He likes hooves.
He's a hardy boy.
if our gigantic fan base that's listening to this wants to send us a hoof, let me know. I'll get you our address.
The dogs would be very happy.
But he might be outside for a couple days.
Yeah.
Oh, let's throw this in at the end there.
While we're sharing funny stories of things our dogs have done.
Funny stories and things that dogs have done and how they smell and stink. Apollo, when we first moved here to this spot we're at in Texas on my family's land, he found a skunk, and the skunk sprayed him straight in the face. The skunk was dispatched later by me, but he spent like 3 or 4 days we didn't let him in. So bad.
It smelled
so
really
they can get into some stuff, and you always need to have a backup plan for how to have them outside. And a way that we do that to keep them outside is we have that dog run.
Yeah, now that we're somewhere stationary where we're going to be, we did not do this kind of thing when we were on the road, obviously, because we were all different kinds of places. I want to.
Oh man, I'm out of coffee.
I want to stress that we are very careful about where we go with the dogs, keeping an eye on them when they're outside, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We trust Apollo significantly more than we trust River, so he gets a little bit more leeway. But all of that said, now that we're somewhere stationary,
in the middle of nowhere,
we've been able to set up more of like a permanent area for them, which has been really, really awesome.
Yeah, so we've got about, I'd say, I bought 70 feet of that cable, and I had about 8 feet left. So each dog has maybe about 25 to 30 feet, maybe about 10 to 12 yards, something in that range. It goes from a tree to the porch on that cabin, and then we basically just have a chain attached with that. It slides along, and they can go 3-4 feet each side of their cable and go up and down and back. And that's, instead of a fence, that's what we've done. And we don't leave. That's not a permanent thing.
No, they're not like out there 24/7.
No, it's not like we have a gigantic logging chain wrapped around a tree that our dogs are dragging around. No,
this is more, honestly, it's more for River than anything, because when River's outside, if one of us isn't with her, like watching her and actively engaging with her, she needs to be contained, because otherwise she could potentially run off. She's done it before, and I know she would do it again. So we created the run for her, and then we put in a second one for Apollo, really because there are times where, like, if we have to go to town, and going to town for us is like an all-day event, because we live, the closest major town to us is College Station.
That's about an hour each way.
Yeah, and it's a major thing for us to go to get groceries and all that stuff. And so we wanted the dogs to be able to be outside, so that like they're not having to hold their bladders if they need to go, and like they can be getting fresh air and kind of like not exercise but just like moving around and being dogs instead of being cooped up in their little kennel area. And so we put in 2 runs for Apollo and River, and that's been really, really nice. And I think they like it. They haven't been complaining very much. So
no.
If they didn't like it, I think they would let us know.
Yeah.
So at any rate, that's kind of what we're doing while we're here. During the night, they sleep inside with us in their little kennel space with their beds, and then during the day they alternate between being inside and being outside. I really, really like to have the dogs with me like all the time, so if I'm going in and out, they're coming in and out with me. I know you are a little bit different. You kind of like to set them up where they're like stable and doing their thing, and then you kind of do your thing.
I mean, I like them being around, yes, but being in such a small space, and I'm a little bit larger than you.
Yeah.
Say, for instance, like cooking or this or that, if I'm stepping on and tripping over them, it can get mildly frustrating. I mean, no different than a toddler, I assume.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
The good thing about dogs, and I've joked about this before, is that we've always been able to say, if I was going to the track and you were going with me, and so that's from leaving at 6 and getting back at 1 or 2 in the morning. Well, you can leave them for 6 or 8 hours and you don't get Child Protective Services called on you.
No,
they're just going to sleep the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a little bit about our family. Someday, if we have more land and more space, I fully anticipate we will have more dogs.
Yeah. But for now, the extra 8 feet will be enough, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. We already have 8 feet on the floor in here, and I think that's more than enough. So anyway, let me know either in the comments or over on our Instagram under the post for this episode. You can follow us at Maybe We're Just Rambling. Let me know about your pets and if you travel with them. If you have any thoughts for like overall cleanliness or little hacks that you figured out, let us know.
Mall in.
Yeah, let us know, because maybe there's something that we haven't thought of that would be like revolutionary and life-changing. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If
you want to see a treat featured of our dogs eating it, let us know, and we'll get you an address.
We'll send you a P.O. box. Yeah. Do you have anything else?
No. I'm Stuart.
Well, hang on. I gotta close
Come on,
out.
I like doing that.
We gotta close this out.
Come on.
Before we wrap it all up.
What are we closing it out with?
A couple of things. I want to thank everybody for listening. I've continued to get really positive feedback.
Hit them with the 1-2.
Exactly. I've been getting really positive feedback from the people who have continued to listen to this. I really appreciate it. Share it if you think that you know someone who would enjoy this podcast. Share it with them. Let them know that they can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts as well.
And just a disclaimer, I'm going to talk to Rebecca about this being 45 plus minutes. Maybe next time it won't be that.
If you have a problem with the overall length, that's feedback that we would like to hear. I don't mind long form podcasts.
I don't either. I don't want somebody to get lost in it though and be like, that was too long. I wouldn't listen to that again.
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, maybe that's some like R&D that we need to do. Let us know if that's something that you don't like, or if the length is fine. If you have general feedback at all, please let us know, because we are still very much figuring this out, and there's a learning curve with everything. So we want to be able to have good conversations and ramble like we do, but we also want to create a product that people are actually going to want to listen to. So
if you want it to be longer, trust me, we can ramble.
Let us know. All that said, don't forget you can follow us on Instagram, like I mentioned. Please do subscribe and leave a review if you are able to. And
the review does more than everything else, I believe.
Well, I don't know. I was listening to a podcast like the other day, and they said subscribing does more.
Oh.
So it's like it's just whole algorithm thing.
Yeah, a whole activity based.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Do something, please. It helps us out a lot. Give us some feedback, whatever it may be, positive, negative. We take it all. And
you're not going to hurt my feelings.
No. And that's pretty much it. Now you can go into your closing gear.
I'm Stuart.
And I'm Rebecca.
And this has been our ramble.